And before we take up the key takeaways of PM Modi's Ukraine visit, we now tell you that during his meeting with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky described the encounter as historic. He also expressed his gratitude to Prime Minister Modi for his presence.
Really very good meeting, and this historic one, and for us it's very important that the first Prime Minister from your very big country, and during all our history, all our independent history, so it's during last 33 years, almost 33, because tomorrow it will be the 33rd Independent Day. So this is historic moment for our nations. It's not about me or Prime Minister Modi, it's not about personalities. That's why I think that it's more important that both of us. It's about both our nations. And that's why I think it's historic moment, and I'm very thankful to Prime Minister for coming.
And let's now bring in our expert guest on the subject of Prime Minister Modi's successful and landmark visit to Ukraine. Ajay Bisaria, former senior diplomat, joins us live. Good evening to you. Mr. Bisaria, what do you make of how this visit has gone in terms of not just how there are 4 pacts that have been inked, which is significant considering the current environment, but also how the leaders have really connected with each other as well and tried to put center stage the message of peace?
Yes, I would say that this has been an example of successful peace diplomacy. It's something new to India. India hasn't been doing this kind of thing for a long time. And I think it's a new experiment, a new phase in India's diplomacy. And I think all the events and all the optics were very positive today. So I think we have reason to believe that this was a very successful visit and a successful exercise of peace diplomacy.
What does it tell the world? Because the world had been looking very closely at how this visit really goes in the context of the kind of visit that Prime Minister Modi had to Moscow about 6 weeks back.
That's right. I think we should look at both visits as part of a piece. There was a visit to Moscow and then the visit to Ukraine are part of the same kind of exercise in peace diplomacy, because the Prime Minister first went to Moscow and then to Kiev, and he gave messages that were very similar or, kind of mirroring each other, which is that he gave a gentle nudge to both leaders to not try and solve the problem on the battlefield, to sit down and talk to each other, and to say that if they needed any help from India, India would be willing.
And many people are describing this as an example of India first foreign policy as well, and also the fact that India has chosen to remain strategically independent, and that it is part of that context where you have been an envoy yourself, that he went to Poland first and then from there he went to Kyiv, and before that in July he also went to Austria's capital Vienna. He's focusing on a particular region at this stage for India's own interests as well.
Absolutely. I think one other readout of this visit is that it's part of India's Central European diplomacy. India, as you said, Prime Minister Modi visited Austria after 41 years, or 41 years since the last Prime Minister had visited Austria, and 45 years since the last Prime Minister visited Poland. So visits to Austria, Poland and Ukraine, even if you keep the war aside, are important. That there is a foray by India into a region that is often overlooked, which is Central Europe. When we talk of Europe, we tend to talk of the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and perhaps Russia, but not really include Central Europe, which is the new Europe. And therefore, in India's approach to the world. India is covering regions that it had earlier perhaps neglected or not been able to focus on. But the focus of this bit of diplomacy certainly was in trying to make a point about the global conflict, in trying to nudge the warring parties towards peace.
And what do you make of the 4 pacts that have been inked? They range from agriculture to other kinds of assistance as well, also cultural exchanges. Now, how can this be used to further strengthen ties, especially where trade is concerned with Ukraine, because it used to be at a much higher level before the global pandemic hit, then came the conflict. So that is something that has left a lot of ground to cover to get to par at that level which existed pre-COVID.
Well, I would read this as a signal that, once the war is over, in the post-war phase, we would try to get back to business as usual. These are the kind of pacts that are always under discussion between countries, and taking advantage of a high-level visit, they are quickly finalized and signed. But I won't read too much into these pacts. These would be the standard fare of diplomacy. The more important point is that this is the first ever visit by an Indian Prime Minister into an active conflict zone, and taking a certain risk for peace, taking a certain risk for making a point that India as a global player has an interest in getting peace, or getting these conflicts resolved peacefully.
And Ambassador Bhasaria, since you said once the war is over, I'm tempted to ask you, is there a situation emerging, and perhaps Prime Minister Modi has travelled to Kyiv, I don't know if he sensed it or not, before that he went to Moscow as well, like we just talked about, that the war is heading towards some sort of a resolution, if it's possible at all?
Well, the current reading of the war is that it is dangerously escalating. So when you exercise or try peace diplomacy, there's never a good time, because there's never a good time in a war. You never know when you've planned the visit ahead of time, when you get there, whether there would be an escalation or a de-escalation. So, you've seen on the ground that Ukraine has made moves within Russia and the Kursk region. Russia, on its part, has made moves within east, to Ukraine's east in the Donetsk region. Both sides seem to be preparing themselves for a possible dialogue or a settlement where they negotiate from a position of strength, where they could exchange territory, they could exchange prisoners. So my own guess would be that this conflict will head towards an end, towards resolution by the end of the year. The larger geopolitics will play into it, the elections in the United States and so on. And what India is simply saying right now is, we request you to consider getting on the negotiation table and to talk to each other, because peace is not in your peace is something that is in your interest. It is in the interest of India. It is in the interest of the global South, and it's in the interest of the world. So I think we should read this as a limited foray to make a point about moving towards peace, and not necessarily look at it towards a move towards a very quick conflict resolution.
Yes, certainly a very consistent and direct message, both in Moscow and in Kyiv, from Prime Minister Modi. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about it, Ambassador Bhasaria.
Thank you.